Hello everyone, my name is Abby Brading and covered a really great perspective on tips and techniques that worked for her home studio setup, and I'm going to take us down a different path and journey through some things that worked for me. I'll start by talking a little bit about my history between my undergrad, post-baccalaureate studies, and graduate studies. I was in college for a combined 10 to 11 years. I graduated with my Master of Fine Arts degree in the ceramics department from Indiana University Bloomington in 2017. Coming out of college, I still needed to make forward progress. However, my original plans and ideas didn't quite work out. I didn't land the job I wanted, nor the residency. I also wasn't prepared nor willing to uproot myself to travel for work in my field. But still wanting to continue the momentum toward financial stability, I started working for the USPS in 2017, where I'm still employed full-time today. This work takes up quite a bit of time out of my day, and it's the main source of my income. However, my interests and identities still work toward and revolve around being an artist and an educator. While working for the USPS, I'm also an associate instructor at DePaul University in Greencastle, Indiana, where I teach an introductory ceramics course. When not doing both of those things, I finally have time to be the owner of my own home studio in Indiana. The images I'm showing you here are just a few samples of that body of work that I've been working on. So coming out of graduate school, I, like many of us, was used to working in spaces and settings that looked like these pictured here, where you have access to spacious tables and shelves, vast material resources, the dedicated glaze rooms, and of course the multiple indoor and outdoor kiln use. So whether coming out of school or just starting your career, you'll have to plan ahead on how to continue that particular practice. What do you do when you no longer have access to that inventory and those resources? What happens, like in my situation, when plan A, B, and even C falls through? A home studio build can check a lot of those boxes. These are examples that I have pictured here of what that could look like. A home studio, in the simplest terms, is a space where an artist makes their work. Unlike the 2D medium and our colleagues in the 2D department, where a space can be more transient with the setup and packing away, in the ceramics field, we generally need to have dedicated space that we need to convert. So in the images that I'm showing here, these are converted attics, basements, spare bedrooms, garages, etc. When thinking about getting started, you'll need to do a little self-investigation to figure out what your goals are, like what is your productivity level in the studio? Do you make 1 or 2 large sculptures every month, or are you a production potter who needs a lot of table space? Creating a basic outline is going to be an impactful step to focus on for when you go to build that studio or convert that already existing space. Create a layout for the best utility and ergonomic use of the space. Next, you'll want to set a realistic budget for when it comes to buying the equipment or purchasing the building materials or the renovation. Think about how you want to prioritize the use of that space for your equipment as well. The kilns and the slab rollers, they take up space. One thing as artists we also need to be aware of is the risks and the safety levels. Are you checking for fire hazards or dust collection issues along the way? Gauge your level of work activities and find out where your skills, strengths, and resources lie. When analyzing my own home studio situation, my solution was to build a small outbuilding on the property where my husband and I own our home. We were fortunate enough to be able to do that by working as a team to combine our resources. This is my partner pictured here. He and I both worked together to design and build this structure that you'll see the progress of in the images to come. It took months of preparation and planning to be able to draw up the building plans and to gather the materials. The process caused us both to be able to learn new skills and other tasks that we hadn't done before, such as running electrical wire for lights and outlets. Before we could even begin to build, we dove into the research to make sure that the structure met the local and state permit laws, and making sure that there were no site-specific or environmentally sensitive restrictions, making sure that there's no historical structure protections, etc. Building codes are also going to vary state by state, and even could be different for each township, so researching local laws is going to be key here. You'll even want to go as far as reading your homeowners association clauses. All these things should be considered. Lastly, hire the professionals when it comes to the dangerous or risky stuff like electrical circuits and plumbing from main lines. The professionals can also check to make sure that your work meets current building codes. According to our local laws, for example, we didn't need a building permit if the enclosed structure was 200 square feet or less. As a bonus, uncovered floor space, such as a deck or a ramp, did not count toward that square footage total. In the center photo is a custom stair that we built to get access to the storage in the attic. It's attached to a winch that raises and lowers the stair by a control bar, so you get to do all the fun work of designing just how you want it. The sources that we found really helpful as a go-to for materials was the University Surplus Store, Habitat for Humanity Restore, and Craigslist, just to list a few. One thing I want to point out, though, that one of your biggest resources is actually going to be from your friends and family and from your professional network colleagues, such as your colleagues from universities and residencies. For us, we were able to source repurposed insulation, donated wood, bargained vintage exterior lighting. We recycled hardware and hinges. Some of the materials were new, such as the treated lumber and metal sheet siding, but the total estimate wound up being somewhere around $3,500. The interior consists of custom handmade shelves to fit the space and tables. I knew being an artist was going to be a lifelong commitment for me, so starting to acquire skills and tools and my throwing wheel along the way, it started as early on as my undergraduate studies. So fast forward 6 to 8 years later, and by the time I was out of graduate school, I had the equipment and materials I needed to get my home practice started. This meant making small hand tool or clay purchases along the way, and also saving money for those bigger investments like a kiln. A good used kiln or throwing wheel in your price range might take a while to snag, but if you keep your ear to the ground and be diligent in your search, you'll be surprised on what you can come across. For example, I bought my first kiln, an old Jenkins, in 2012 for a couple $100 from a production artist who had a studio out in the swamps of Florida, and it's been a reliable workhorse of a kiln for me even today. In these images, we are cutting and welding bar stock to create a base on wheels for the kiln to sit on. My second larger Olympic kiln I picked up for free from a retiring hobby artist out of Cincinnati, Ohio, who wanted to give it away to a good home. It was in good condition, however, it needed to have the elements replaced, so I considered it a good opportunity and challenge to learn that process and to update the wiring on both my kilns. If you can be adaptable and willing to learn how to do these sorts of things to keep your equipment in good condition, then it will be a worthy investment for years to come. I mentioned earlier that I had a couple of income streams. That's what really helped fuel my home studio build, with purchasing materials along with my partner's income stream as well. There are also some unrestricted grants and fellowships available to work specifically toward starting a professional practice setup. They are competitively awarded from a national applicant pool, and I've linked them as a resource in this presentation. I also want to call special attention to state and federal grants that are currently available, especially here during a global pandemic where working artists or artists whose income is generated through their artwork can apply. After I had the brunt of everything together, I then started planning ahead for the sustainability of my business. Another well-known grant that I personally can vouch for is through Surf Plus, the Artist Safety Net, their Get Ready grant. Individuals who apply could be awarded up to $500 on a competitive basis to safeguard their business. I applied for this grant with renewable and environmentally friendly practices in mind. My partner again and I designed a rainwater plumbing system and a waste collection procedure that we wanted to install in the studio. As many ceramic artists know, water is a key component for not only production within the ceramic arts, but also to ensure cleanliness. Safety precautions that protect against the accumulation of dust in the air and on surfaces are important. I needed access to a running water source to help keep my tools, equipment, my body, and of course the facility clean from that repetitive dust buildup and exposure. Surf Plus found that to be a worthy endeavor and actually awarded me with a Get Ready grant. Surf Plus also offers resource guides to walk you through personal safety and business risks within your art practice. Educational institutions may not cover this topic in depth, like understanding the safety risks and hazards of making your artwork and owning your own studio. For example, don't assume your homeowner's or renter's insurance covers the loss of your studio and equipment. For insurance purposes, you are a business if you offer goods or services for sale. In summary, I've provided one path for your consideration that works toward achieving both artistic and financial goals. However, working for someone else takes up roughly 70% of my workday. Then I go on to teach 2 nights a week, so I roughly have about 2 hours a night to focus on my artistic practice. So in this path, finding that work and studio balance is going to be super challenging. It's really hard to be creative when you're tired at the end of the day. My honest solution to that is just sheer willpower. You've got to be hungry for it. Develop strategies for staying creative. Opt to spend your time consuming art to keep your focus. Stay organized in your home and studio life as well. I also want to point out that find your tribe, whether it's at your daytime job or at the university. Find people that are going to energize you, keep you motivated, support you, and encourage you every step of the way. Finally, be kind to yourself. I think one of the things that we sometimes forget is that we're all on this individual journey. We may not be at the level that we want to be or at the age that we want to be in the place that we want to be. So be kind about the narrative that you have in your own mind. Some setbacks to this particular path is, of course, those soul-crushing compromises. Artists seem to have this fundamental need to create, and when that time's taken away, it's really devastating when there's just little precious time and energy at the end of the day. We have these ideas that jobs are linked to who we are and what we feel as people. So managing those feelings of failure and that consistent feeling of just being unsettled, and just know that that lingers, but that's okay because the steps are being taken and you're going to get there. This particular path is also the slower path towards those artistic and professional goals, but it's steady. It's the steady path. Some positive outcomes that I'll leave you with is, since my income streams are secure, the work that I do in my home studio is not my primary source of income. So what that means is I get to focus on the different types of work and research that's important to me, versus maybe a production setting where the output very much becomes the priority. So, of course, working for someone else, the health insurance and the retirement benefits are going to be locked in. The actual studio building on my property is also an asset that adds value to my home. The financial stability and the rapid debt payoff, the student loan payoff, it really frees up your mind and resources resources to double down on the things that really matter. Before I wrap up my segment of this presentation and pass you over to Brett Beasley, I'd like to leave you with a quote that jazzes me up and inspires me to keep pushing forward. It's from Chef Francis Mallmann. He says, "You don't grow on a secure path. All of us should conquer something in life, and it needs a lot of work and it needs a lot of risk. In order to grow and improve, you have to be there a bit at the edge of uncertainty." Thank you.